The call came just after 2 p.m., right as I was finishing a client report. "Eli, did you hire movers?" My neighbor's voice crackled through the phone, heavy with confusion. "Because there's a truck outside your place, and people are taking boxes inside." I froze. My pen slipped from my hand, clattering onto the desk. "Movers? I hadn't hired anyone." "Wait, what?" I asked, my heart thudding. "They're unloading furniture," she said. "And I think I saw a guy using your front door key." A cold, sinking feeling punched me in the gut. "By the way, this channel is still new, and your support means the world to me. Please subscribe and like this video. Let's hit 1,000 subscribers together. And when you subscribe, comment below what number subscriber you became. I'll be reading every single one." My name is Elijah Carter, 32, single, a systems engineer who's worked his ass off for every square foot of that house. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Panic wrapped in betrayal. I grabbed my keys and bolted out of the office. Every red light, every slow driver felt like a conspiracy. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. By the time I turned onto my street, my pulse was a drum in my ears. There it was. A hulking white moving truck idled in my driveway. And parked right behind it. A car I recognized all too well. Harper's. I slammed the brakes and jumped out before the engine had even stopped. And then I saw them. Strangers carrying boxes across the porch I stained myself last summer. A couch, my couch, being dragged across my hardwood floors. And standing in the entryway like she owned the place was Harper, my ex-girlfriend. "What the hell is this?" I shouted, my voice louder than I intended. Every head turned. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then Harper's lips curled into the kind of smile I'd always hated. The one she wore when she knew she was crossing a line on purpose. "Elijah," she said, in that fake sweet tone. "You're home early." I stared at her. "Answer the question. What's going on?" She glanced at the man beside her, a guy I'd never seen before, then back at me. "I told you I'd be coming by for my things." "Your things?" I stepped inside, my shoes thudding against the floor. "This isn't getting your toothbrush from the bathroom, Harper. You're moving in furniture." Her eyes didn't waver. "I need a place to stay for a while." I blinked, convinced I'd misheard. "You need a place? And you thought just breaking into my home and unloading a U-Haul was the answer?" "I still have a key," she said flatly, "for emergencies." I barked. "Not for whatever this is." The man next to her, her new boyfriend, I realized with a jolt, shifted awkwardly. "Look, man, she just said she lived here before, so she did live here." Past tense. My voice dropped to a dangerous calm. "Not anymore." Harper's jaw tightened. "Elijah, stop being dramatic. I'm between jobs. My lease ended. I have nowhere else to go." "Not my problem." "It is your problem," she snapped, stepping closer. "You have this massive 3-bedroom house all to yourself. And I spent 2 years of my life helping you build this place. I deserve a piece of it." The audacity made my chest burn. "You deserve nothing," I said coldly. "You left. You cheated. And you forfeited every right to this house when you walked out that door." The movers froze mid-step, their eyes darting between us. I turned to them. "Put everything back on the truck, now. One of them stammered. "Ma'am hired us. She's not the homeowner," I cut in. "I am. And if you don't stop unloading, I'll have you charged with trespassing." That did it. The boxes went down. They shuffled awkwardly toward the truck, avoiding Harper's glare. Her voice wavered with rage. "You're not serious." "Completely." She laughed, bitter, disbelieving. "Do you really want to do this? You want to humiliate me like this in front of everyone?" "Humiliate you?" My voice cracked with anger. "You broke into my house. You're the one who should be humiliated." She folded her arms, defiant. "I'll fight this, legally. I have proof I lived here. Mail, bills, photos. Mail from 2 years ago doesn't make this your house." Then, with deliberate calm, I pulled out my phone and started recording. The movers, the boxes, her face, her boyfriend awkwardly holding a lamp that wasn't his. "What are you doing?" she hissed. "Evidence," I said. "Because I'm calling the police if you're not out of here in 5 minutes." The boyfriend muttered something under his breath, set the lamp down, and started backing toward the door. Even he wasn't dumb enough to stay. But Harper wasn't done. "This isn't over, Elijah," she said, voice low, trembling with fury. "You'll regret this. I promise you." I stepped closer until there were only inches between us. "The only thing I regret," I whispered, "is ever giving you a key." Her eyes flickered. Fear, maybe, or the realization that she'd finally gone too far. She yanked her purse from the counter and stormed out, the door slamming behind her so hard the windows rattled. For a long moment, I just stood there, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and the echoes of a betrayal I hadn't seen coming. My heart was still racing, but something inside me had shifted. This wasn't just about an ex trying to sneak back into my life. This was about control, about boundaries, and I'd just drawn a line she couldn't cross. I walked to the door, locked it, and leaned my forehead against the wood. My hands were still shaking, but for the first time in years, I felt something that almost tasted like power, and I knew this was only the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house made me think Harper had come back. Every shadow outside the window had me reaching for my phone. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was something heavier, darker, the kind of weight that comes when someone crosses a line you never thought they'd cross. By morning, I was done being passive. The first thing I did was pull the footage from my security cameras, the movers carrying boxes, Harper walking right in with that stolen key, even her new boyfriend trying to play house in my living room. Then I saved the video I'd recorded on my phone. And finally, I emailed everything, all the proof, to my lawyer. The reply came just 30 minutes later. "This is clear trespassing and attempted unlawful entry. If she tries this again, we can pursue legal action immediately. For now, change your locks." I did more than that. By noon, I'd replaced every lock in the house, added a keypad security system, and programmed my cameras to send footage straight to a cloud backup. I wasn't leaving a single door open, literally or figuratively. But the part of me still seething wasn't satisfied. Harper had tried to steal a home, my home, and she wasn't going to walk away pretending it was nothing. So I did something impulsive, and maybe a little cruel. I posted a photo. Just one. A shot from my doorbell camera showing the movers standing on my porch, boxes in hand. The caption was simple. "When someone thinks breaking into your house is a solution to their problems." The post blew up faster than I expected. By lunchtime, my inbox was full. Friends, coworkers, even my old college roommate were messaging me, "What happened? Are you okay? Tell me you pressed charges." But my favorite replies were the ones sharing their own stories. Betrayal, entitlement, break-ins by people they once trusted. It felt like a whole hidden army of people who'd been through the same thing. By 5 p.m., Harper called. I didn't answer. Then she texted, "Harper, take that post down. This isn't fair. Harper, people are talking. You're ruining my reputation. Harper, Eli. Please." I stared at the screen, lips curling into a smile. Fair? What part of breaking into someone's home is fair? For years, Harper had manipulated every situation to make herself the victim. And now, for once, her actions were loud enough to speak for themselves. I didn't need to argue. I didn't need to yell. All I had to do was let the truth breathe. By the next day, the consequences had started to ripple. A friend texted me a screenshot of Harper's Instagram. Her account had gone private. Another messaged me that she'd been asked to take a leave of absence from her job while they reviewed the situation. Even her new boyfriend unfollowed her. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a flicker of satisfaction. That night, just as I was pouring a drink on the back deck, my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a text. It was a video call. Harper. I ignored it. Then she called again. And again. Finally I answered. I don't even know why. Maybe part of me wanted to see her fall apart. Maybe part of me wanted closure. Her face filled the screen. Tear-streaked, mascara smudged. Gone was the smug confidence. "Eli, please," she said, her voice cracking. "I need you to take that post down. People at work saw it. My parents saw it. I'm getting threats." I didn't say anything. I just stared at her. "You're humiliating me," she whispered. I let out a humorless laugh. Harper, I was humiliated the day I came home and found strangers moving furniture into my living room. You're just experiencing consequences. Her eyes flashed. You're ruining my life over a mistake. A mistake? I leaned closer to the screen. A mistake is forgetting your keys. A mistake is texting the wrong number, hiring movers, breaking into my house and trying to move in without my consent. That's not a mistake. That's a crime, she sniffled, wiping her face. I didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't think you could hurt me, I corrected. You thought you could do whatever you wanted and I'd roll over. Well, surprise. I'm done rolling over. Her lips trembled. You're going to regret this. I tilted my head. You keep saying that like it's a threat. But the only one with regrets here is you. I ended the call. The next 2 days were quiet. Too quiet. No calls, no texts. But the silence was deceptive. Because on Saturday morning, I woke to the sound of shouting outside. I pulled up my security feed and felt my stomach drop. Harper, standing at my front gate. And she wasn't alone. Her parents were with her too. The same people who once told me I wasn't good enough for their daughter. Now they were pounding on my gate like trespassers begging for mercy. Elijah, her mom shouted. Please, we just want to talk. Talk? I muttered to myself. Now you want to talk? I switched on the speaker. You need to leave. Right now. Eli, come on, her dad called. We're all family here. We can work this out. Family? I said, my voice flat. Family doesn't break into someone's house. Family doesn't try to steal what isn't theirs. Then Harper herself stepped forward, her face twisted with desperation. Take the post down, she hissed. Do it now or you'll regret it. Threatening me again? I asked. Bold move, considering I have hours of video evidence. This isn't a game, Eli, she yelled, her voice breaking. I'm losing everything. Good, I said coldly. Maybe now you'll understand what losing something real feels like. Then, with a single tap on my phone, I triggered the gate alarm. The shrill sound ripped through the air. Harper and her parents stumbled back, shielding their ears, retreating toward their car like burglars caught in the act. I didn't have to open the door. I didn't have to yell. All I had to do was show them one thing. They had no power here anymore. And for the first time since the call from my neighbor, I felt it. A deep, satisfying sense of control. This was just the beginning. The following week felt strangely peaceful. For the first time in months, my house was silent. My mornings were slow. I made coffee, checked emails, watered the plants. And every time I passed the living room, the same living room Harper had tried to invade, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: ownership. But peace has a way of never lasting long, not when someone like Harper is involved. By Wednesday, the calls started again. Not from her this time, from unknown numbers. At first I ignored them. Spam, I figured. But then the voicemail started piling up. Dozens of them. Some were angry. Some were mocking. A few were downright threatening. Hey thief, let Harper have her stuff. You're a piece of trash, man. She gave you the best years of her life. Hope you enjoy living alone, loser. The last one made me pause. Because it wasn't a random voice. It was her brother. Harper wasn't just embarrassed anymore. She was building a smear campaign. That afternoon, a friend texted me a screenshot of a Facebook post. Harper had gone public. She'd written a long, teary paragraph painting herself as the victim, saying I kicked her out of our shared home, that I was spiteful, and that I weaponized social media to destroy her. Life, thousands of people had seen it. Hundreds had commented. And while some were on my side, many weren't. It stung. More than I expected. Because even when you know the truth, there's something deeply unsettling about watching a lie spread faster. I paced the living room for a long time that night. I could have deleted my post. I could have called her, tried to reason. But then I remembered standing in that doorway, watching strangers carry boxes into a home she had no right to. I remembered the smug smile on her face. No, this time she didn't get to rewrite the story. So I called my lawyer again. Send her a cease and desist, I said, and draft a notice of intent to pursue charges if she sets foot on my property again. already ahead of you," he replied. The next morning, the letter was delivered, certified, documented, and legally binding. Harper was officially on notice, but the universe has a twisted sense of humor, because that same afternoon, my security cameras pinged with motion detection. At first, I assumed it was a delivery. Then I saw the feed, Harper, on my front porch, again. Only this time, she wasn't alone. She had 2 men with her, and they weren't movers. They were hauling trash bags. I watched, jaw tight, as they dumped them across my lawn. Clothes, shoes, random junk, most of it wasn't even mine. And then Harper looked directly into the camera and flipped it off. That was the moment something inside me snapped. I didn't call her. I didn't yell. I called the police. Within 20 minutes, a patrol car rolled up. By the time I stepped outside, Harper was still there, leaning against her car like she was proud of herself. The officers approached, calm but firm. "Ma'am," one of them said, "you're trespassing. And based on this footage, you're also committing vandalism and harassment." Her smile faltered. "This is my house too," she started. The officer cut her off. "No, it's not. We confirmed the deed. You don't live here. You don't belong here." They escorted her off the property. No handcuffs, a not yet, but a stern warning and a written report. One more incident, they said, and they'd press charges. I watched her drive away, rage twisting her face behind the windshield. And I realized something. This wasn't just about the house anymore. This was about control, the only thing Harper ever truly cared about. And she was losing it. But Harper's desperation had only just begun. The next morning I woke to a storm online. Screenshots of my old text messages, cropped, edited, twisted, were circulating on social media. Harper was leaking private conversations, spinning them to make it look like I had promised to let her come back and share the home. The comments were brutal. Some people called me a narcissist. Others said I led her on. A few accused me of lying. I felt my blood boil. But anger turned into resolve. I opened my laptop, attached all the proof, the security footage, the police report, the certified cease and desist letter, the video I'd recorded that first day, and sent it to a journalist friend who ran a legal advice column. Off the record, I wrote, "This is what's really happening." 2 days later, the story hit the web. Headline: Ex-girlfriend attempts to force her way into man's home. Faces possible criminal charges. It exploded. Bigger than either of our original posts. It went viral on Reddit. It trended on Twitter. People weren't just on my side. They were furious for me. The tide had turned, and then, just as the dust was starting to settle, Harper showed up one last time. It was 10:47 p.m. on a Friday. I was watching a movie when my phone buzzed with a notification from the security system. Motion detected. Back door. My stomach dropped. I opened the camera feed, and there she was, climbing over the fence. Hood pulled up. Phone flashlight cutting through the dark. She wasn't just trespassing. She was breaking in. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. "This is Elijah Carter," I said, my voice trembling but steady. "Someone's trying to enter my home. I have video footage. Please send officers now." As I watched her on the screen, creeping closer to the back door, I realized this wasn't just a story anymore. It wasn't just social media drama or legal threats. This was real, dangerous, and it wasn't going to end quietly. The dispatcher's voice was calm, but my pulse wasn't. "Units are on their way, sir. Stay on the line. Do not confront her." But staying still was impossible. My legs felt wired with adrenaline, my hands trembling as I watched the live feed. Harper crept along the side of the house like a thief. No, not like one. She was one now. She paused under the kitchen window, glanced around, and pulled something from her pocket. My breath hitched. It was a lockpick. This wasn't desperation anymore. This was premeditated. I backed away from the door, heart hammering, every instinct screaming at me to run, to hide. But another part of me, colder and sharper, told me to stand my ground. This was my home. She'd already tried to take it from me once. Tonight, I wasn't letting her take a single inch. The security alarm triggered before she could finish. A piercing, high-pitched siren tore through the night, flooding the yard with strobing floodlights. Harper stumbled back, startled, her hood slipping from her head. Then the camera caught something I'll never forget. Her face. Not angry, not even scared, just hollow, like someone who'd lost everything and was too far gone to realize it was her own fault. 2 police cruisers screeched into the driveway less than 3 minutes later, lights flashing red and blue across my front lawn. I stayed on the line with dispatch until I heard the pounding on my door. Police, are you safe? I opened it slowly, hands raised. I'm fine. She's around back. I followed them as they rounded the corner, flashlights cutting through the dark. Harper was crouched by the fence, clearly trying to escape, but the moment she saw the uniforms, she froze. Ma'am, put your hands where we can see them, one officer commanded. Wait, this is a mistake, she cried, hands trembling as she lifted them. I used to live here. This is my house too. Not according to the property records we checked earlier this week, the officer said. You're under arrest for attempted unlawful entry and trespassing. The moment those cuffs clicked around her wrists, something inside me shifted. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't even anger. It was relief. I'd spent months, maybe years, letting Harper dictate the terms of my life. But now, finally, she had no more control. As they guided her toward the cruiser, she twisted her head toward me, eyes wide, cheeks wet with tears. Eli, please, she sobbed. Don't let them do this. You know me. I didn't mean... I cut her off, my voice steady but cold. You meant every second of this. You just never thought you'd face consequences. They loaded her into the back seat, and the door slammed shut with a heavy finality. The sirens faded into the night, and with them, the chaos that had been living rent-free in my head for far too long. The next morning, the story was everywhere. Woman arrested after breaking into ex-boyfriend's home. Social media saga ends in handcuffs. It's my house too, says woman charged with felony trespass. It was surreal watching my life become a headline. Coworkers texted me screenshots. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years called to check in. Even my boss pulled me aside. You okay? He asked gently. I nodded. Better than I've been in a long time. But Harper wasn't done. Not yet. 3 days later, her attorney reached out. A carefully worded email, polite but desperate, proposing a private settlement if I agreed not to press charges. They even offered a public apology. For a moment, I considered it. Part of me wanted to just end it, close this chapter and never think about her again. But then I replayed the footage in my head. The movers, the lies, the smear campaign, the trash on my lawn, the break-in. No, this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about accountability. I instructed my lawyer to proceed with the charges. Weeks passed. The hearing was scheduled. Harper pled not guilty, of course, but the evidence was overwhelming. Video, photos, police reports, witness statements. There was no spinning the story now. The day of the arraignment, I showed up to the courthouse early. It felt strange walking into that building. Sterile walls, the hum of whispered conversations, the weight of justice hanging in the air. When they brought Harper in, I almost didn't recognize her. The confident, manipulative woman I once knew was gone. In her place was someone deflated, defeated, dressed in a too-big blazer and avoiding my eyes. She didn't speak to me, didn't even glance in my direction. And when the judge read the charges, trespassing, unlawful entry, harassment, attempted burglary, her only response was a faint nod. She was released on bail pending trial, but with strict conditions. No contact with me, no approach within 500 feet of my home, and mandatory counseling. It should have felt like closure. And in a way, it did. But walking out of that courthouse, I realized something. This wasn't just about punishing Harper. It was about reclaiming my narrative. For years, she'd shaped the story of our relationship, our breakup, even my own worth. She'd made me doubt myself, manipulate my emotions, make me feel like I was the problem. But now, the truth was undeniable. The story was mine again. That night, I sat on my back deck under a sky littered with stars. The air was cool, the lake still, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something bad to happen. I thought about all the times I'd almost given in, almost opened the door, almost deleted the post, almost forgiven her, and I realized how many people out there probably had their own Harper. Someone who crossed every boundary, twisted every truth, and still expected forgiveness. Not this time. Not for me. I poured myself a glass of bourbon and let the quiet sink in. It wasn't just silence, it was peace. Hard-earned, scarred, and real. But deep down, I knew one thing. This story wasn't over yet. The trial was coming. And when it did, the final piece of this long, painful chapter would finally fall into place. And when it did, she'd learned that some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. The day of the trial arrived like a storm I'd seen on the horizon for months. Dark, inevitable, and heavy with everything that had led us here. I stood outside the courthouse in a charcoal suit, the crisp November air biting at my skin. Around me, reporters jostled for position, cameras clicking, microphones thrust forward. I kept my head down and said nothing. This wasn't about public opinion anymore. This was about the truth. Inside, the courtroom was colder than I expected. Rows of benches filled with strangers, curious locals, bored reporters, a few people who just wanted to watch the drama unfold. At the front, the judge presided like a monument carved from granite. And then there was Harper. She sat at the defendant's table, her hair tied back, face pale and drawn. She wouldn't look at me. She hadn't looked at me once since that night in the driveway. Her lawyer whispered something in her ear, and she just nodded silently, eyes fixed on the table in front of her. When the trial began, it was clinical, methodical. The prosecution presented the evidence like pieces of a puzzle, one that only formed a single picture: her guilt. A security footage of the moving truck, at contracts she'd signed with movers in my name, a video of her trespassing at 2 a.m., trying to pick my lock, police testimony about the night of the arrest. Each piece stacked higher and higher until even Harper's attorney struggled to find words. His defense was weak, a desperate grasp at sympathy, emotional instability, heartbreak, confusion. But the facts didn't care about feelings. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the stand slowly, my heartbeat loud in my ears. State your name for the record. Elijah Carter. And your relationship to the defendant? We dated. For 3 years. We broke up 14 months ago. I told them everything. How the breakup had spiraled into harassment. How she'd tried to take over my home. How she manipulated everyone around her to believe I was the villain. I didn't sugarcoat it. I didn't dramatize it. I just told the truth. And when the prosecutor asked me why I pressed charges, I looked straight at the jury and spoke from somewhere deep inside me. Because I spent years believing that setting boundaries made me selfish. I believed her when she said I was overreacting. I believed I was the problem. But the night I came home to strangers trying to move into my house, I realized the problem was her. And if I let her walk away from that without consequences, then I'd be telling myself, and anyone else she ever does this to, that their safety doesn't matter. That their home isn't theirs. And I refused to do that. The courtroom was silent when I stepped down. Even Harper's lawyer didn't meet my eyes. 3 days later, the jury returned with a verdict. On the charge of attempted unlawful occupancy, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of criminal trespass, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of attempted burglary, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of harassment, we find the defendant guilty. Harper's knees nearly buckled as the words hit her. She whispered something to her attorney. I couldn't hear what. And then looked at me for the first time in months. There was no anger left in her eyes. No arrogance, just regret. But it was far too late. The judge's sentence wasn't overly harsh. Probation, fines, community service, mandatory therapy, a restraining order. But it was enough. Enough to remind her that actions have consequences. Enough to show that the world would no longer bend to her manipulation. That night, I went home to a house that finally, truly felt like mine. No more movers. No more late-night pounding on the gate. No more fear that the next knock on the door would be her. I stepped out onto the porch, the lake shimmering under a full moon. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that isn't empty but full. Full of peace, full of possibility, full of me. My phone buzzed once. A new voicemail. Harper's voice, soft and broken. "I'm sorry, Elijah. I don't expect forgiveness. I hope one day you can stop hating me." I deleted it without listening to the rest, because she was wrong. I didn't hate her. I didn't feel anything for her anymore. And that was the most powerful thing of all. In the weeks that followed, the story faded from the news cycle. People stopped whispering. My neighbors stopped peeking through their curtains. Life, beautiful, ordinary life, returned. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since before the relationship. I took a trip to Colorado. I reconnected with friends I'd pushed away. Every small choice was a brick in the new foundation I was building. A life built without fear, without manipulation, without her. One evening, as the sun set over the lake, my neighbor Sam, the one who had called me that first day, stopped by. "You look different," he said, handing me a beer. "I feel different," I replied with a smile. We sat in silence for a while, watching the water turn gold under the fading light. Then Sam asked something that made me pause. "Do you regret any of it?" I thought about everything. The heartbreak, the chaos, the courtrooms, the sleepless nights. And then I shook my head. "No," I said softly, "because without it, I might never have learned how strong I really am." Later that night, I stood at the window, looking out over the home I'd fought so hard to protect. And I whispered the same words I'd said the night the trial ended. Words that had become my quiet mantra. This house isn't just where I live. It's proof that I survived, proof that I'm not disposable, proof that no one, not even someone I once loved, gets to decide my worth. The phone was silent. The gate was locked. The world was peaceful, and for the first time in a long, long time, I wasn't just surviving. I was free.